The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. I have an award-winning actress tonight, a writer, director, and producer who has been incredibly busy with some great projects, including a feature-length film co-starring Anthony Rapp entitled Scrap, which has taken several awards on the film festival circuit. It's an amazing film that I saw myself, and I encourage all of you to go see as well. So let's bring her in now, Miss Vivian Kerr. Welcome to the show, Vivian.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to have you on. And, I want to kind of get into that, the movie Scrap. And I know that you wrote, directed, and also was in it starred with Anthony Rapp and some great actors in this film. But that one garnered a lot of nominations and awards on this film festival circuit. So talk about the film, first of all, for our listeners who haven't seen it yet, what you can get into without obviously giving away the plot line, but, kind of talk about it a little bit and, basically why you started writing that movie.
Yeah, so Scrap is, it's my first feature as a writer-director, and then I also play Beth, the main character, and it's about a woman who lives in Los Angeles, set in modern day, and she's recently been laid off and has a lot of debt, has been, evicted essentially from her place of living, and is pretending to be away on a business trip while she is sleeping in her car and trying to get another job and hiding her situation from her estranged, sort of disapproving older brother, Ben, who is beautifully played by Anthony Rapp. And so it is, it does have obviously deal with very serious subject matter, but it is a dramedy. There is humor and comedy between the siblings. But I would say, yeah, it's very much in keeping with those films like You Can Count on Me, the Kenneth Lonergan film with Mark Ruffalo, Laura Linney, or the Savages with Philip Seymour Hoffman. So if you like those kind of brother-sister dramedies about difficult family members and how families reconcile dysfunctional relationships, then Scrap is the movie for you.
I think one of the things that I got out of the movie, just watching it kind of hits home. I think for a lot of people, when you watch your situation, because I think everybody out there, that's listening, many people are one or two paychecks away from being in that situation, and at no fault of your own, and sometimes it happens, and people judge people that are in that situation, unfortunately, and unless they're in that situation themselves, and I as I was watching this, I'm like, wow, this could happen really to anybody, and the fact that you in the movie you have a child as well, makes it even more, of a hard situation, because, what do you explain to your child that doesn't understand anything that's going on when it comes to something like that, and then throw in the family member dynamics that may be disapproving of, but really doesn't know why you're going through it or what you're going through. And then assumptions are made, and that's the other thing that I noticed, that assumptions are made that were incorrect. So again, you're having to navigate a lot of things, and I felt that the writing was tremendous. You did such a great job, writing that film and making everything kind of come to life, and it was just very realistic. And again, kudos to all the work that you did on this, and just you were fabulous, in it with Anthony, and the rest of the cast was tremendous as well. So I just wanted to say congratulations on the piece of work.
Thank you so much. It has been interesting, actually. We did a really, really long 2-year festival run with the film. And so I was able to take it to a lot of different cities and watch it with a lot of different audiences. And I thought it was very interesting how some people would be like very, very hard on my character, especially in the beginning. There was sometimes people would really blame her and really kind of I think it frustrated people because she had a middle-class background, and because she's not someone who was without resources or without family. But it was important for me to portray that, because I think there are a lot of people who find themselves in situations like that because they are too proud. They don't want to ask for help. You don't want to admit to someone, even to admit you've been fired or laid off, like a lot of people have that. It's a lot of shame attached to that. Right. Even if it's not your fault, in the film, like Beth has been let go because of downsizing, like there was none of it was her fault. So, although arguably she could have had some savings perhaps, but
Well,
we sort of unpack that a little bit as the film
sure.
goes on. But
Yeah.
yeah, people I think definitely were some audience members that I think I was surprised a little bit by their judgment. And that's not to say she doesn't make bad choices.
Yeah.
Obviously she makes like a series of very bad decisions. But hopefully as the film unfolds, you kind of understand a little bit more of why she is the way she is and why she doesn't feel like she can go to her brother for help. But I also thought it was interesting how after screenings, people would come up to me sometimes and say that they had been in a similar situation at one point in their life, and these are people who outwardly, if you saw them on the street, you would think they're incredibly successful. And they said, yeah, there was a time where, just life happens. There's peaks and troughs and
All the time.
and and they would say like, yeah, this happened to me, or I was couch surfing for like a few months, and friends helping me out before and I just like couldn't get back on my feet it took me a while. And I think that's really common. I think that happens a lot more than we think.
Oh, 100%. And I lived in New York City. When I first moved to New York City, everything's expensive there. Rent is ridiculous. And, you can make a lot of money. You can make good money and still be struggling. And, every day, and, you're paying, hundreds of dollars a month and, in commuting costs and things like that. I mean, it's like I said, it's very realistic what Beth went through in that movie. And again, I think it opened a lot of eyes to what could happen to anybody. So again, kudos to the project. And, I also want to kind of get into this. I know a lot of writers and producers and directors, especially in your debut, when you first sit in a screening, I guess, on a big screen in a film festival. I mean, what kind of went through your mind when you first saw, because you created that, that was something that you created from start to finish. So what was your thought? I mean, was it kind of a spiritual moment for you to see, everything on the screen for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely kind of an out of body experience. So we had shot the film in 2021, and then we were doing post-production for a year, and we had our world premiere in 2022 at Deauville in France, which is this incredible festival. It's the second biggest festival in France after Cannes. So it's, and similar to, they've got the mile-long red carpet, and they've got this theater there that I think it's something like 1,000 seats. I mean, it was massive, and has just, I mean, it's just like top of the line. And they kind of like escort you in, and they have like special seats marked off for you. And I remember sitting there. I think I was sitting next to Anthony, and kind of like not like shaking, but like a little bit like, when you can kind of feel the cortisol kind of coursing through you a little bit.
Right.
And I did have to, because I knew we had to do like a Q&A, like we did a brief introduction of the film, and then afterwards we did a Q&A. And I'd seen the film at that point so many times, but I had never seen it with an audience before. And that wanting to have that experience of like seeing my first feature with an audience was something that I had dreamt about for so long. And so to be there with my cast and to be actually watching it, it was nervous isn't even quite the right word. I think it was a little bit of like an out of body experience, but it was something very, very special. And it's a moment I'll always remember.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also, what's it like to direct your own, direct yourself, direct, all the others on the cast, but, you're producer, writer, director. I mean, what's it like, kind of being in that position, but also having to get into your character, so to speak? Is it challenging? And, I guess when you cut afterwards, I mean, is there ever anything that you kind of change on the fly, maybe didn't work the way you wanted to, or the way you had it on paper? So talk about that process as, acting in your own direction, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. There are things that you're going to adjust on the fly. And I think that's the benefit, I think, of also being the writer. I'm not sure what it would have been like if I hadn't written the script and I was just acting and directing in it, because then I think you would almost want to be constantly going back to the writer and kind of conferring with them. But because I was already the writer, like I could sort of shift and adjust things on the fly. And that's not to say that we were like doing a lot of improvisation, because we weren't. But, there were just things where, if it wasn't quite working the way I wanted it to, for whatever reason, I could just make those adjustments. But I really enjoyed it. I think, this was a really good film, I think, for me to act and direct in for the first time, because even though I think, I'm obviously not Beth,
Yeah.
thank God. Um, we are not radically different in how we speak and how
Right.
we walk and how, right? Our
Sure.
mannerisms.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't one of those wild sort of transformational roles, that made it easier. I'm like fascinated now about how I need to like learn more about, how people like Bradley Cooper do like Leonard Bernstein, and then they're also directing like that. I think would
Sure.
be sort of like the next thing
Yeah.
for me to do, because I do think that that would be quite challenging, and you would have to really put some very clear planning in place for how
Yeah.
you're going to do that, depending on certain scenes, especially. Um, yeah, though I just think that would take a lot more planning. But I will say, like, I have been acting for a long time, so I know how to take care of myself as an actor.
Right.
And I have not, this was the first lead in a feature film I'd ever played. So to me, I had so much more time than I normally do, because if you're just day playing on someone else's, independent project, or you're just a guest star on a TV series, you have like no time, I mean, I did so much of that. Like, I mean, I just remember, you'd like guest star on like Criminal Minds or whatever, and you're seen as you're crying because they just told you your brother's dead or whatever. And then you're like sitting in some trailer on some lot in LA, and then they knock on the door and they're like, "We're ready for you." And you're like, and you're like, then you like
Yeah.
on set, and you're
Yeah.
supposed to like, kind of rev up for your big crying scene. And then,
Yeah.
it feels like it goes by in 30 seconds. And then they're like, "Great, thanks for coming." And you're like, "Oh,
That's it.
okay, bye." Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
it's so, so rushed. So like
Yeah.
this was like nothing compared to that. I mean, this
Right.
was like, I had no time,
Yeah.
but also, yeah, like there was moments in between setups where you're trying to kind of carve out little moments for yourself. I think there were times where probably the first takes of things were like, especially if it was just me,
Mhm.
and I wasn't another actor, I think there were probably scenes where the first take was like unusable,
Right.
because I wouldn't really know until after we did the first take, like, oh, right, I forgot about what I wanted here. Okay, great. Now I know what I'm doing,
Sure. Sure.
So a lot of ruined first takes, I think, but learned a lot. I mean, I
Well,
definitely
it
learned
all
a lot.
works out. I mean, it's film, so you can redo it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
and it's not like the old days where you. I mean, I don't know what you shot on, but I'm guessing it wasn't 35 or 70 millimeter
no, it
film, right?
wasn't
Yeah.
film. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
digital.
But one other thing I wanted to ask you about, because you and Anthony had great chemistry, and you could tell. I mean, you really truly look like brother or sister. I mean, the way you were interacting with Anthony, and one of the things about 15 years ago, I don't know, years ago, my daughter and I were in New York City. And for her birthday, I wanted to get her tickets to rent. And for that week, Adam Pascal and Anthony Rapp were reviving their roles in Rent. And so we got tickets. We got the last three tickets in the place. Anyway, so we're sitting there. It was like a rock show, like they were rock stars. When they came out, they were like standing ovation. It was crazy. So how do you attach people to your projects? I mean, how do you, like, for casting? Because obviously Anthony has a big following, and in the theater world for sure, but also in the film world with the film Rent. But how do you attach Anthony to this project?
So it started actually as a short film. So we did a proof of concept short film in 2018, and then that did a year of festivals in 2019. And he was in the short. But I would say one of the ways that I think that we were able to get him to do it was, well, it just worked out with his schedule. So that was obviously a huge plus.
Sure.
But we made an offer through his reps. But I knew it was going to be a feature even then. So a lot of times if you send an actor like a short film script, right, like the agent or manager might be like, what is this? Like, I'm not sending my client like some
Sure.
short or whatever.
Yeah.
But we sort of had all this other stuff. Like, it was like, here's our pitch deck, it's going to be a feature. It was always a proof of concept. And so that's how we kind of sent it over and pitched it. And I think because he comes from the theater, I think maybe his reps are like more open to smaller projects. I don't know.
Sure.
But got to his desk and he read it. And yeah, I mean, I can't remember. We must have gotten on a Zoom call, but now I actually cannot remember oh no, I do remember. Yeah, we did get on a Zoom call. And after he agreed to do it, and I think it worked out with his schedule. He's based in New York, but we were shooting in LA. He was already going to be in California for something else.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of fit in nicely.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. And I really recommend people, if you want to, if you want to do kind of a proof of concept, I really recommend it, because even though we only worked together for a really brief period of time, almost from the second we were, on set together, I thought he and I had, perfect chemistry, exactly the brother-sister dynamic that I was imagining for this
Yeah.
project.
Right.
And so as soon as, and he's just like a lovely person, right? Like you never
Yeah, he seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you never know. Like sometimes
Right.
some, great actors who are just nightmares, right?
Right.
And you don't want that.
Exactly.
Especially,
Yeah.
especially on an indie, there's just no point. Life's too short, and
Yeah.
you'll never get film done.
Yeah.
If
Right.
they can really hurt your project. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I went away and wrote the feature and sort of tailored it to him, to what I imagined, he would be like in the role of Ben, and
Right.
then sent feature. But I mean, that was, I think, like a year and a half later. So I
Oh,
guess the only
wow.
two pieces of advice I have are, you know, if it is something you want to make into a feature, I would say pitch it as a proof of concept. Don't pitch it as just a short. That doesn't
Yeah.
sound very exciting.
Sure.
And also I think go for it, right? Like there's so many friends of mine who have made like incredible, short film projects. That they never tried to, they sort of cast their friends in it, but they never really tried to like make any offers or go for any name talent. And
Right.
I think a lot of filmmakers, especially if you're a first-time director, they don't do it because they think like, well, no one will ever want to be in my project because I don't have a big, I'm not a huge known quantity,
Sure.
but actors just want to work, like
100%. That's such great advice, Vivian. I think, it's, no matter what you are, if you're an actor, if or director, and, phones record on 4K at least now. I mean, you can get a new iPhone and you can make, if you have a project, you just do a short, on with your phone. And like you said, a proof of concept. It doesn't have to be with, Arri Flex cameras and, the big cameras. If you have a story, my advice would be to just do it, and, just get it out there, for people to see. A lot of things don't get made that are amazing, would be amazing projects because people don't think that they're going to be watched. You just never know.
And I think also too, like I think that sort of just to ask mentality is like across the board. Like, even what you were just saying kind of about cameras, it's like, I've been to so many festivals now and met so many cinematographers who are so talented, who are out of work,
Yeah.
who often own several camera bodies that's just sitting in their, I would say garage, but they should never keep it in the garage because
Right.
that's
Exactly.
but like most professional cinematographers own at least one camera body. So,
Yeah.
And if it's a good storytelling and you seem like an interested, passionate, curious director, and you're like, listen, like I don't have a huge budget, but like I can pay you $300 if you're willing to bring your gear and let's make something cool together. Most cinematographers, if they're not busy, will say yes.
Right.
And it also doesn't matter if 5 or 6 of them say no, if the 7th one says yes. So like you're also building your relationships, and people know that, people are willing to work on small projects to start to build those relationships.
I agree. And then, you've been on Grey's Anatomy, you've been on show, like TV series. We are with the band. Jimmy Kimmel, Jay Leno, you've done spots on a lot of different, shows and projects. And, talk about relationship building, because when you're on all these different projects that you've done over the years, how important is it to build relationships on each one of those sets that you're on? Because, do you still talk to people that you were, part of a project years ago?
Well, what's funny is I feel like just now I've been in the industry long enough where things are starting to like circle back around. I was at Austin Film Festival this last fall, and I met one of the like mixers there, and I think forget. I think I just heard her call my name or something. It was like Vivian, and I turn around and this girl's kind of like barreling up to me, and she's like, "Hi, like, what kind of would she say? It was so funny. She was like, you killed me on an episode of Castle." And I was like, I did. Like, I was like, and this was an episode of TV that we shot I mean, I can't remember what year it was, but it must have been over 10 years ago. And yeah, like we did this episode of Castle together where we were roommates, and I definitely murdered her. Like, and we've never seen each other since. And so
Really?
we ended up talking, and she's been acting and doing other things and in the industry. And so I think these kind of relationships like end up circling around in ways that you don't even expect. And that's happened to
Yeah.
me a lot in the last year or two.
Hmm.
People that I've known in one capacity, I see them pop up in my life in another capacity. So it's such a good lesson that it's like just treat everyone with respect and kindness and
Yes.
transparency, and give freely of yourself when you can. Not everything has to be about money. Obviously, don't let people take advantage of you, but
Right.
like if you can sometimes donate $25 to a friend's Kickstarter, or give them a day on set for free, or introduce,
Yeah.
connect people, make a referral, because it will all come back around, and you will need to pull favors as well, especially if you're going to try to make independent projects.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's so well said. We talk about this so much. I mean, out of 250 episodes, I think we've talked about it on about a third of them at least, about
Mhm.
treating people with respect. And no matter who it is, it could be the receptionist working, at the casting company, or it could be the PA working on your project, and you never know who that PA is going to be. It could be the director at some point in the project that you're working on, and I think it's such a small world, and I know I think you just proved that, to say that this lady that you worked with was in a show, that you killed on a show. I mean, you probably never knew that you're going to run into this person again, but you did. I mean, that's just like, again, it's
Yeah.
just such a small world, and everything comes back around, and I
Well, and
guess.
now I feel guilty
Yeah.
because I can't remember why she was at the festival, but she must have been there with her own film, you know.
Right, right.
Um, so yeah, like people do continue just making stuff, and like you just yeah, you never know. I don't know. I think reputation is super important. And yeah, it's always like wild to me, like when people like do something. Like there was someone who I'd worked with recently who kind of did really burn a bridge in like kind of a huge way, and I remember at
Yeah.
the time being like, I almost wanted to call them and be like, "Are you sure you want to do that?"
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like
Exactly.
I'm
That's
worried
true.
about you. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because you, you, you just, I don't know, like you only have one reputation,
Yeah.
and um, like we were talking about before, it's like, how you treat people on set really matters. People talk,
Yeah. Right.
and I can see now again, like just having been in the industry for a while, like there's been times where I almost hired someone and then I asked someone about them who I just, saw that we had a mutual person in common on IMDb, and
Sure.
you reach out and say like, "Hey, what was your experience with this person?" And sometimes they're like, "Oh, amazing. You have to
Yeah.
hire them
Right.
yesterday, right?" And then sometimes they're like, "You know what? Experience wasn't great. Like, can we talk about it? Like, I'm going to call you right now. Like, I just kind of want to give you the inside scoop."
Yeah.
Um, and it's really important. It's more important than I would say in other industries for sure.
Well, especially in your industry too. I mean, things like that become public sometimes, and then that creates, more problems for your career if it's on the negative side, and it doesn't take much to do that. And I know with social media and with just things that are online right now, and what are your thoughts? I mean, I always tell people this too on my shows, like, be careful what you say on social media, because one misstep could really ruin your career. And, how do you navigate the social media world and what you do? Because I mean, you have so many things going on, and, and all the followers and so forth. I mean, what's your, what's the standard you hold for yourself, I guess, when it comes to social media?
I feel lucky because frankly, I've never been that interested in social media. I mean,
Yeah,
I have social media, mostly I think to keep track of people that I meet at festivals.
sure.
And I have it obviously because it's, if there's a way to promote my film, if there's we got a good review, or there's like some,
Sure.
something related to it, or I want to support a certain film festival. But almost everything I post is about promoting one of my films. I
Sure.
don't, I've just never been that interested in it. Like I think I might technically still have Twitter, but like the only thing I think I remember ever posting on there was just like film stuff. So I
Right.
always like never understood people would like have conversations or
Yeah, well,
like
yeah, I'm the same way. I put
express
everything, even on
personal
my Facebook, is
opinions.
all about my podcast. I don't put
Yeah, I
anything
just
opinions or anything like that. So I try to really
yeah.
be careful with that because I know some people, kind of like I said, can get really in trouble with what they say on social media, and then you get people, thousands and thousands of people, that don't agree with you, and all of a sudden want to start arguing with you, which I
Yeah,
never
I mean, I do
understood.
see a lot of, I mean, I love, I love seeing my friends'
Yeah,
kids, their pets, and their travel photos, like all of that fun, wholesome stuff. But yeah, there are times where sometimes people are like, here's an essay about something. And it's like, I'm always like, oh no, don't do it. Like
yeah,
it's pretty cringe, right? Like it's
yeah,
pretty embarrassing. To me, I'm like, if you really want to write like a thoughtful piece about something, like write a guest article or like write a blog. Like I just don't think social media is the place to like explore your opinions
yeah,
on various topics. Like I just don't think it's
yeah.
a good place for
I,
it.
I, I agree. What are your thoughts on, I mean, filming locations? Because I think, I know that, it was at one time, I mean, British Columbia, like Vancouver, there was a lot of stuff going on, still might be, Wilmington, North Carolina for a time, New Orleans, Atlanta, I mean, certain areas of the country that had a lot of, because of tax, rebates and things like that. But do you feel like a lot of productions are leaving California or leaving LA, like that used to be there and now is kind of leaving because of those tax rebates? And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because it seems to be like that's the consensus now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening for think a couple decades, I mean, like I think
Really?
well, I mean, maybe not quite that long,
Right.
but yeah, I mean the entire reason that sort of Atlanta rose as such a hub for Hollywood features was because Georgia was able to incentivize, the studios to come and build there and shoot there.
Right.
All the Marvel films are made there.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
as well
didn't
as
know
there's
that.
tons of
Really? Oh,
production.
okay.
And there's tons of production obviously in Canada for similar reasons. Um, but yeah, no, I think I mean the general thing people say is like films aren't really shot in LA. I mean, as a sort of general rule, right?
Uh,
TV series are shot in LA.
yeah.
Most people's certainly for independent films, yeah, most people are shooting outside of LA. I am in the minority that I decided to make two feature films and shoot both of them in LA.
Sure.
And frankly, like I've been working on developing a third feature, and I very much will not be shooting it in LA
Yeah.
because it is a difficult place to shoot. It's expensive. The permitting is expensive. The insurance is expensive. It's just a very film unfriendly city, as well as the fact that every time you need a location, you can't get anything for free. It's so hard to get anything for cheap. Even on the crew side, right? Crew will, if a crew member, not like a department head, but like maybe a slightly like lower down crew member, they could bail on your film because they could get a call that their buddy across town needs an extra person for a big commercial shoot that's going to pay them, four times as much as the day rate they're making on your small project, and they'll just leave, right? So like you could face like crew attrition, like so it's
Yeah.
just hard. So yeah, I mean everyone I know that's making a lot of indie films, they're shooting them outside of LA, and that's my intention as
I'm
well with
so
my film.
I'm surprised, Vivian, because it seems to me that I mean, because LA has been like the for what a century over a century the really of filmmaking. When it moved out there, I mean, it seems to me that they'd want to keep that industry there because that's why everybody's out there. I mean, everybody that's an
Yeah.
actor or director or producer, that's why they're there because of that. And you would think that it would be easy to shoot and easy to get permits and easy to get locations. It's amazing to me what you're saying because I mean, I would have thought the opposite.
You would think no, I mean, I think if you actually look at sort of the regulation and like sort of the rules and yeah,
Yeah.
it's been made a very film unfriendly place. I did have to laugh though a little bit. Like there was some, I forget, it was like there was some article, I think it was in the LA Times maybe a couple months back, and it was like the mayor was organizing like a committee to explore like the mystery of why film production has left LA. And
Well, I
I
think
just
you
remember
just rattled it off.
it was just so funny. I mean, it was just so silly. And I was like, wow, like, okay, because you just talk to anyone for more than if you are setting sitting down and really kind of brainstorming, okay, like how am I going to make, let's say, a film for, I don't know, $800,000, right? I'm going to make my indie for 800K and I'm going to shoot it in LA and it's going to be a 20-day shoot. You very quickly figure out like, oh, there's like this and I have to pay that and then there's this.
Yeah.
And if you compare that to other places, like it's very, very different. I was just
Yeah.
at a festival in Waco, Texas this summer, and they which I thought was genius. They sort of rented this like trolley bus for us, and they put all the filmmakers on this bus, drove us all around Waco, Texas, essentially showing us like all of their possible filming
Yeah.
locations.
Diverse locations. Yeah.
Yeah, and the woman who is oh gosh, I can't remember her exact title, but she's essentially like the film commissioner, the person who
Right.
would be in
Right.
charge of bringing the shooting to Waco. I mean, she was essentially like, we can help you out. You don't need permits. If you want to come and location scout here, we'll put you up at a hotel for free for a couple nights.
Wow.
You can get this location for free. You can get that location for free. And so like, that's what we mean by film friendly. I mean, like this is a place where they would love to have you come and shoot there for like a couple months, right? They would love that
Yeah.
because they're smart and they know like you bring a film production to town, even something let's say is a sub 1 mil budget,
Right.
that is going to be a lot of money that's going to be back into the town because all the catering is going to be local,
Right.
right? All the Airbnbs and hotels where all the cast and crew are staying, like that's money going back into the town. It just, there's just so many other expenses that
Yeah.
the production is going to have that they're going to then spend in the town. So I thought that was so smart. And so when a filmmaker is like comparing that to like, I don't know, you try and shoot in a gas station in LA, they're like, all right, well, we can give you 4 hours for $6,000 and you
Right.
better have a
Yeah.
here. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
like
Well, I mean, Chip and
um
Joanna Gaines, you could probably thank them for all the filming that gets done in Waco. That's where they're
yeah,
robbed out of. But look, I mean, if I'm told to come on out, we'll cater to you and put you up for free. Will you location scout? And I mean, who's going to say no to something like that? I mean, that's
yeah.
just amazing. Plus, the weather
And
is
there's so many.
pretty mild, for the most part all year round. But
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
thinking of like Friends films, recently it's like I know someone who shot in like the Carolinas, I know someone who shot in Georgia, someone who shot in Maryland, New Jersey, Massachusetts. Like, it's like as
yeah,
I'm thinking of places where people have been shooting, even in California, people are shooting elsewhere. Like people are shooting, out
outside of
in
LA, yeah,
yeah, like going out to like, Oxnard or something.
right, right,
So yeah, I mean, as long as you're, and it's really hard for LA crew because people are willing to bring out their department heads. So like you might bring your DP, maybe your first AC, but maybe not your first AD, right? Your UPM. You'll bring your department heads, but then all those other crew positions, you're going to hire local. It's going to be a mix of local professionals and probably like students from graduate film programs.
sure.
You can source locally. And so a lot of the crew members in LA, I think I have a lot of sympathy for them, especially the ones that are union. I think they're going through a really hard time right now. A lot
Yeah.
of them are really struggling for work.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. Let's get into this. There's a movie that's going to come out maybe later in 2025, but Seance movie that you wrote, directed, and produced. Talk about that a little bit, because I know that I was reading on IMDb the summary of it, and it just looks so interesting to me. It's right up my alley. So talk
Oh,
about that a little bit for our listeners to get excited about.
yeah, so Seance couldn't be more different from Scrap, other than the fact that they're both one-word titles that start with S.
Yeah.
Um, so Seance is a period piece. It's set in the 1890s in California. It's a Victorian Gothic thriller. It's very much sort of in the same vein as The Haunting, the original Haunting from 1961, or The Innocents with Deborah Carr. So it only has 4 characters. It's very much like a play. It was very loosely inspired by an August Strindberg uh, play called Creditors. And so it's about these 4 characters who are trapped in a house overnight due to a storm, of course, and about it's about grief. One of the couples has recently lost their child due to an accidental drowning, and um, there is the potential that maybe that little girl is still in the house. And so it's about grief, it's about adultery, and just all kinds of fun stuff like that. So I would say it's a psychological thriller.
Wow. Can't wait for that. Hopefully you can come back and talk about that when it comes out, because I really, really want to get into that when it does. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, before we go, though, I always ask this question. I want to ask you as well. But when it's all said and done, Vivian, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind to your fans when it's all said and done?
Well, I love that you think I have fans. That's really sweet.
Well, I'm
I
one. I'm one.
but I really admire, honestly, I really admire people like Martin Scorsese who are just still at it. I mean, I'm not even sure exactly how old he is. That probably is impolite to hazard a guess, but he doesn't need to be doing this. He could be sitting at home with a cup of hot chocolate, his foot up on an ottoman, and just relaxing and enjoying his legacy. Because if he just stopped making films, like he would still be, he would go down in history as an incredible director.
Sure.
But he continues to do it because he loves it, right? And I think that's the dream. I think just to be able to continue to do it for as long as you can and leave behind a body of work that you feel is meaningful and nuanced, that's the goal. I think just continuing on. So yeah, my hope would be to, do as many projects as I can and explore a lot of different themes, and tell a lot of different stories, and hopefully some of them will resonate with people, and maybe not all of them will, but hopefully some of them will. More of them hopefully will hit than don't. And yeah, to leave behind a body of work that I'm proud of, even if no one else is. That I think is the goal.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Vivian. Before we go, how can our listeners find Scrap? So I know it's on Prime Video and some other streaming services for rent and purchase, but how can they find it?
Yeah, so it's on, right now it's on 4 platforms. So it's on Apple, Amazon, Google, and Vudu, which I think is also Fandango at home. So I think if you just go to IMDb, I think it shows you links to where it is. But if you search in like the Apple Store, Scrap, I think it comes up. And I think if you type it into Google, it'll just come up. So okay. Yeah, it's on those four platforms for rent or purchase.
Great. Again, I encourage everybody listening to go see that. It was a tremendous film, and thank you for being on the show. You're an amazing talent, and I really enjoy your work. And thank you for taking the time. It's been an honor, so thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is really fun.